Daniel Elliott is a healthcare pioneer, really. Today we'll talk about BPGbio, a firm at the forefront of developing treatment for serious health challenges. It is supported by substantial family office investments as they develop transformative therapies for cancer and age-related diseases. And it's also interesting from that angle that it is backed by families, by other families. So I think it's extremely relevant with the fact we are in the family office world. We'll talk about your drug, BPM 31510, now in phase 2, designed to combat aggressive cancers. Daniel Elliott is the driving force behind the firm. And we'll talk about his journey from personal loss to leading innovation in medical treatment. So yeah, I guess I'll start with your story, which is very unique. We spoke a little bit before the session today and before about you and your family office. So let's start with your story.
Sure. So, well, good morning, Danny. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, my story, I am a serial entrepreneur. I was originally trained as a mechanical engineer, but I jokingly say that I'm not a very good engineer. But what it really helped me do was understand systems, right? So when I look at a business, whether it's, I started my career originally in the energy sector, primarily around renewables on the clean side, wind turbines and solar energy, large scale utility, lithium batteries and so forth. And, having an engineering background isn't so much about whether you can design a part or whatever. It's really about understanding systems. And so today, fast forward 30 years and I find myself in biopharma, and it's really understanding systems medicine and connection points between disease and relevant medications or design pathways to get to relevant medications. But anyway, my background, I find myself at BPGbio. We're working on oncology. We have a rare disease unit as well, and some of the more difficult neuro issues around, say, Huntington's and things like that. But one of the things that attracted me to it, at being an engineer, is the application of AI, and one of the first companies in the world to apply AI to biology.
And just before we dive into BPGbio, because it's not every day that the person behind the company is a serial entrepreneur. Could you talk just a little bit about how you came to this point where you have a significant family office yourself? Just about your journey. You had several exits, not even one. In which sectors were they, and just a little bit about your impressive career.
Sure. So like everybody, I've had successes and some that were less so successful. But I have had exits in the energy sector, particularly around lithium-ion batteries, dealing with large infrastructure and heavy-duty truck, bus, mining equipment, things like that. Sort of pieces of equipment that people don't even really think about or realize exist. But my biggest success actually was in the medical industry. I found myself running a medical diagnostics company that we grew from a small startup company of about really 5 employees, or 5 partners rather, and took that company up to around 9,000 people. We were part of the COVID response as well before I exited. So when everybody went home, I went to work during COVID, where we supported countries around the world, particularly the United Kingdom was a big one for us. But as I exited that company from the medical diagnostics, I was looking around wanting to stay in the medical space when I was introduced to BPGbio, which was then actually called Berg.
So you're also a major investor in the company. So let's talk about BPGbio and why did you end up investing into it and so significantly?
Yeah, so BPGbio is unique. When you think about biotech or biopharma companies, usually, well, who was in your Series A, who was in your Series B, who was in your Series C on these venture-backed companies. You see a lot of money, of course, pouring into the space over the last few years. What's interesting about this company is it's supported by 4 family offices. So there's collectively just over $500 million that had been invested into the company, so around 500 million, a little more than that, from 4 families, and my family being one of them. And today, 2 of the families are active in the business. The other 2 are passive in the business. But as we come towards commercialization, we're now starting to look at, we need to diversify the cap table and so forth. But it's a very interesting company because being that it wasn't venture backed, it allowed, from 2009 to this point, it allowed the company to develop really the leading technology in the space around AI and drug discovery in such a way that, I don't think it could happen from a venture-backed business.
Very nice. So AI drug discovery is a hot field. Obviously, we also see NVIDIA, which up till recently was the world's biggest company by market cap. I think they changed a little bit, investing into the industry. So what's your view on AI drug discovery? That kind of...
Well, I think so. Denny, we were talking about this. There's a lot of hype in the sector for sure, and there's a lot of good work that's being done as well. I think what's really important to understand about BPGbio is we're biology first, so we utilize AI as a tool, and I think it's really crucial. As I learned this over the last few years, as AI emerges, I think it's a tremendous technology, truly powerful and game changing going forward across many industries. But I think people today have a little bit of a false view on how AI can work in today's environment. And what I mean by that is, you have to start. AI is still in its infancy, really. So you really need to start with, in our case, with the biology. When you think about human biology, and then you utilize AI as a tool to extrapolate additional value out of that at a greater speed and reduce cost with higher predictability. So, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is there's really a few ways that we deal with it. So we start with our own biobank. So we have one of the world's largest clinically annotated, privately held biobanks. It is truly a massive biobank that we have the clinical annotation. So what that means is we have, tens of thousands or 100,000 patients where you have tissue samples. And tissue could mean, blood, urine, skin, all sorts of different things, or all of it. But you have those samples from patients that are in a healthy state, and then perhaps from the same patient in a disease state, and then from the same patient in a post-treatment state. And you have that also in adjacent family members. So you're able to understand sort of what's happening and changing in the biology along the way. And then because we have all the annotations around it, we also understand a lot about that particular patient in terms of their environment. So in many cases, these were active service members from the military, or we were able to partner with, because we have partnered with the Department of Defense to help them solve some issues. Also from different universities. We have 61 research collaborations around the world. So we're able to build this massive biobank. Then we take that biobank and we feed that into the wet lab, where we work through a whole suite of multi-omics, where we're perturbing the cells or perturbing the tissues in different ways to antagonize them and get responses. You get billions of data points off of a single patient or single tissue. You take all of that and you feed that through AI systems. But when you're dealing with that much data, you need to sometimes go to really, really powerful computer systems. So we partnered with Oak Ridge National Labs on an exclusive basis where we use the Frontier supercomputer. It's the fastest computer in the world today, down in Tennessee, US DOE asset, where we run all of these samples through our Bayesian AI system on the supercomputer. And that's sort of kind of the process that we use to get started.
And more about BPM 31510. Primary COQ10. Sorry, I don't know the terms. Deficiency, sarcopenia, Huntington's ET program, and also the respective market value.
Yeah, okay, so let me first take one step backwards, just slightly, to talk about what AI does in terms of how you work with biology. What really attracted me to BPGbio was understanding how they were employing AI, and what it really does is it reduces cost, it increases speed, or makes it faster, and improves predictability. So you can then apply that in two different ways. You can apply that to drug repurposing, or taking an existing known molecule and extrapolating additional value out of it, or you can apply it to creating an NCE, which is a novel molecule. And so the company's done both of those things, but it really only focuses on two areas of biology. So we talk about all these different diseases, but it really focuses on two areas of biology: mitochondrial medicine, or mitochondrial regulation. And then the second area is protein homeostasis. And so if you think about mitochondrial within the body, the mitochondrial system is, sort of the engine that keeps everything running, right? So 31510 was originally developed by the co-founder of the company, Dr. Niven Narain, back, I don't know, in the late sort of 2010, maybe 2008, 2009 timeframe. That drug, actually, I have something. This is not the actual drug. I'm not actually allowed to show the actual drug on TV, but it looks like this. And so it's sort of, kind of looks like a mustard. And this is just an example of what it would look like. But this type of drug was originally created while Niven was at the University of Miami. And then he licensed it into the company, and then extrapolated that out through the AI system to create oncology assets and other assets, which I'll get into. But that's one example of what you can do. And so if you look at it, this is, again, not the actual drug because I'm not allowed to show an actual, but this is similar to the actual, what the oncology drug looks like. So you can go utilizing AI from a topical to an intravenous, IV, or to an oral formulation, and then it allows you to treat different indications.
So this is the drugs, the different drugs that you guys have in the pipeline. Anything more you want to add here? If not,
yeah, I think so we talked a little, like, what attracted me to BPGbio. I think that's because I can talk about all the science and everything, but I think really, as we're looking at aging, and we're looking at different diseases that come on with age, and we're seeing, a big increase in cancer issues, particularly. That's one of the things that really attracted me here is, during the pandemic, in early 2020, the company that I was running at the time was part of the COVID response. So I was flying around the world dealing with COVID issues, supporting governments. And my father had passed away in 2020 of cancer. He passed away, though, of cancer that, could have been detected earlier, should have been detected earlier. and that there were little in terms of effective treatments once they did discover this. Additionally, my wife's father also, and my father fortunately lived to nearly 80 years old, but my wife's father, he passed away in his 50s, early 50s. Again, wow. Cancer that was late detection and then not very good treatments. So when you think about cancer, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are on the wealth spectrum. In terms of me, I'm first generation family office. But when you look at, doesn't matter whether you're Steve Jobs, who died of pancreatic cancer, or you're, a guy that's working to make ends meet. We're all treated the same when it comes to oncology. You get, some of these aggressive cancers, and there's challenges. When you look around today, I mean, you really have two treatments, right? You've got radiation and you've got chemotherapy, and you have some of the immuno-oncology. But some of it's working really good in certain cancers, and none of it's working that great in aggressive solid tumor cancers. You think about things like gastric cancers, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, glioblastoma multiforme, which is an aggressive brain cancer. These, from diagnosis to death, is generally months, and so it's really, really a tough situation. And what I found is that when I came into BPGbio, what caused me to get involved with the company was they're really taking a different approach into changing the tumor microenvironment so that it actually, some of these treatments work better and with less side effects. And that's being shown in the clinical trials where we're having success. But the drug's been used in compassionate use for a number of years while they've been going through the clinical trials. And one of the things that stuck out to me, Denny, was there's a young man who was 7 years old when he went on to a compassionate use of this drug, which is an early version, so it's not exactly what I'm showing you here. And that drug's been developed further. But that particular individual went on to an early treatment way back when he was 7 years old. And this was a young man who had Ewing sarcoma. So they had, his leg had cancer. They had already taken part of the leg, I think around the foot. They were going to take the rest of the leg, but it had metastasized to his lungs. So he had little treatment options, and he was certainly terminal. He went on to an early version of this drug. That young man's now 26 years old, and he's running a startup company in Florida. Wow. So it's truly amazing in terms of what you can do with more advanced treatments. And I'm seeing that across, I think more than 80 patients have been treated through compassionate use with variations of this drug. And then when you look at where it is today in its clinical trials, in the pancreatic cancer study that just concluded, these were highly refractory patients. So these were patients that were coming into the trial that had already failed, 1, 2, 3, or 4 lines of therapy, most of them 2 lines of therapy, meaning they were really bad shape. And we were able to double the overall survivability. And so if you can capture those patients earlier and start treating them, you can really see remarkable results.
So how many drugs are in the pipeline, roughly?
So really, so there's 2 key drugs that are in the pipeline. There's many more, that are preclinical or in development. But really, there's 31510, and that is in 3 different formulations. So you have a topical, you have an oral, and you have an IV, depending on what you're treating. And then there's a new drug coming into clinic, which is around cardiac inflammation, and that is what's called BPM31, or that's BRG399 rather. And that's a purely NCE de novo drug that came from the AI. 31510 is a drug that's been developed using AI from a known molecule. But I think one of the things that's very interesting about in drug development, if you look at how you can apply AI, it's very common to repurpose or to expand indications of different medications. So if you take, for example, there's a drug called duloxetine, which is sold in this country as Cymbalta. It originally came into market. It's an antidepressant, I think. Now it's being used for diabetic neuropathy, so for nerve pain in diabetics and other types of nerve pain. But that again happened, in post-market. Another drug which we all sort of know happened, where they adjusted in clinic, which is Viagra. That drug was originally supposed to come into market, or originally was being studied around hypertension, and then they found its alternative use, so it came into market in a different way. But that happened in clinic. And then the same thing that you see in now Viagra, I think, is actually, I saw a report the other day, it's being studied for potential Alzheimer's treatments. But if you look at what AI allows you to do, so 31510 has been able to do indication expansion, either pre-clinic or in clinic. So you're able to move that, some of that information that you would ultimately gather post-market and bring that forward, which is why we're able to look at it for not only aggressive solid tumor cancers, but other mitochondrial diseases. So things that are rare disease or childhood diseases like primary CoQ10 deficiency or Friedreich's ataxia, and other types of things. So when you think about it, you go, wow, geez, that's a lot. Like, this company is doing a lot. It's really not, because what you're able to do is you're able to take the AI and slice this into narrow slices. And then you can say, okay, I'm going to focus on this one now, take that forward, and then I'll come back around and do, indication 2, 3, or 4. Or in some cases, you can do, basket studies where you can pull different indications together that are sort of in the same class.
What do you see the firm, the company in 3-5 years?
Well, we're in active discussion with different pharma. We don't see ourselves taking a drug to market, right? That's not what the company was designed to do. It's not designed to grow up and become a big pharma. It's designed to accelerate the speed and reduce the cost of drug discovery, and then partner or license or sell those different assets and drugs out to major pharma. So we're in active discussion with many of the big pharma names that you would know. I probably shouldn't name them just because of NDAs and things like that, but these are all pharmas that you would definitely know, and whether there be European pharmas or US pharmas. And but I think also, we're doing really, really good work today. If you, for example, in our glioblastoma trial, today we're running a trial in glioblastoma, and I'll share an interesting sort of anecdote story. But usually people think about GBM patients, they're generally in their 50s or 60s when these brain cancers show up. We had a 19-year-old come into the trial. It was a 19-year-old male, 2 tumors, one on the brainstem, one on the left side of the brain. The one on the brainstem, not resectable, meaning you couldn't perform surgery to pull that tumor out. And from what I understand, and I'm not looking, obviously I'm not a treating physician or something, but looking at the data and talking with the site investigators, the prognosis for this 19-year-old was pretty grim, perhaps months. But he came onto the trial, and I think, if I remember right from the reports, he started treatment February 5th. And it was interesting just to hear the update from the site, because we learned that he is working a summer job now. He finished his semester at school, and I thought, well, that's interesting, he's working a summer job. Well, he's actually doing heavy concrete work. And you think about that, you're like, man, how in the world can this, 19-year-old go from, 6 months ago, very grim, prognosis, two brain tumors, and, now he's doing summer concrete work. And then he had come in for some scans recently, and we had heard that he was actually out at the rodeo riding, rodeo horses and things like this. I wish he wouldn't, because we want to keep him healthy. So I don't know if riding a rodeo horse is that great of an idea, but it's amazing, what we see happening out there with this drug.
We have some questions, but we'll get to them in a minute. You're seeking investments. What kind of investments you're seeking right now?
Yeah, I mean, the company really needs to start to diversify its cap table, and I think the reason that this company was able to get to where it is today is because four families brought this company forward. But it's now things are happening where the company is starting to prepare for what I'll call commercialization, but it's a little bit, of the wrong term perhaps, because we're not, as I said, we're not going to take the drugs to market ourselves, but partnering them or selling them or licensing them with major pharma. And as part of that, the company is preparing for an IPO. And so we see the company going public within the next 3 years or maybe less, just depending on, the capital market windows. And so as we prepare the company for a public offering, there's really three things we're doing. Number one is we're diversifying our board of directors. We just brought on Scott Minnick, who's a longtime biotech guy. Scott has a tremendous career in biotech companies, having taken a biotech public and sat on the board of many others and invested into many others. So Scott has joined our board a little over a month ago. We're going to bring other outside board members on in preparation for that. We also are starting to expand our scientific advisory board. It's already very robust, but last year, actually maybe it was earlier this year, but Dr. Robert Redfield, former CDC commissioner, he joined our SAB, and he's a very active participant with the company. And we have others that are soon to be joining as well. We also had Dr. Dipanjan Chowdhury join from Dana-Farber. And so we're getting that sort of built out and more robust. And then the next step is we need to diversify the cap table. I'm not saying that you cannot show up to NASDAQ with 4 shareholders, but you probably shouldn't. So we need to start to diversify the cap table. And the way we look at that is initially we'll bring in other like-minded family offices that are really looking to improve the human condition, but do so in a profitable way. And then we'll start to reach out further into the big funds, sort of the crossover investors around the world as we prepare the company for its IPO.
Now, I'll jump, for a couple of questions from folks here. You mentioned that being backed by family office allowed you to take the company forward in ways that wouldn't have been possible if it was backed by a VC. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look around, right, the VCs, and this isn't I'm not being negative towards VCs whatsoever. I've run VC-backed companies. But, the company was originally founded in 2009. And then the company spent a number of years developing the AI technology, the biology platform, the wet labs, and so forth. And so I think, a VC company would have been much more aggressive about commercialization and preparing, getting the company to start transacting. And that's, it's not a good or bad. It's just, had it done that, it would not have been in the position it is today with such a rich pipeline. We have one of the deepest pipelines of anybody in biopharma, probably the deepest. And if we have a drug coming into a phase 3, we have the phase 2B running in glioblastoma. We completed the phase 2 in pancreatic cancer. So if you just think about what this company has done, there's a lot of companies coming online now talking about AI and developing it, but in biology, it's really, really hard. So the company spent a number of years just developing all of that technology. So, you now have more than 500 patents or around 500 patents around the world. A lot of those are on not only drugs, but on AI. And I just don't think that would have happened had it been venture backed.
Yeah. And which are the proprietary sources of your data? Tissue banks and other such. So that's another question here.
Yeah, so we don't use publicly available data. It's all of the data that we start with is we let the biology guide. So it's all done from the biobank. So you take the raw tissue, from the human, you have from the individual, you have groupings of patients, you have all the clinical annotations. It all starts inside. The reason we don't use publicly available data is we want to avoid any bias that may be already built in. If you take publicly available data, it could have bias that's built in and lead you down the wrong pathway.
Now, what have been the most rewarding experiences for you since joining the company as an investor and leader? I believe you've mentioned the story of how you changed some of the patients' lives. I assume that's a major part of it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something that really was special to me. I spoke earlier about this individual who started on one of the treatments when he was 7 years old, and this was a very early version that's now 26. I think he's 26 years old. I met with him in Chicago, and he's a very good cook, and he cooked dinner for all of us. To me, that's quite special when you think about this young man, and he has a fantastic budding career that's now taking off. And it was this drug that changed his life. So I think that to me is it's quite it's quite special. The other one is that the company is working on bringing out through partnership a topical that's related to this drug. It is actually the topical version for epidermolysis bullosa, and these are children that their skin, they're born with some gene-based issue where their skin is very fragile and it tears open and rips open. And so I met with a mother who had two of these children, a boy and a girl, and they've both since passed away. But she, shared with us all the different work that she had been doing in her life, looking for potential treatment. And her daughter died at the age of 14, and she was telling me that she was pleased is not the right word, but she was happy in a sense that her daughter had passed because she was suffering so much from this disease. And so, when I look at the clinical reports from the trials that have been run where we're able to rescaffold the skin and rebuild collagen with this drug, to me, it's quite amazing. I'm looking forward to getting that drug partnered and out there into the market.
And something interesting is that you and your wife are both involved in the company. How do you balance your work and personal lives? What drives you to stay devoted to the objective and working together?
Yeah, so some people can't work with their spouse. We can. We have for quite a long time. We do well together. But at the end of the day, we stay in our swim lanes. So she does marketing and communications for the company, and I'm more on the commercial activity side. But we definitely stay in our swim lanes. I don't go into her space, and she doesn't go into my space in terms of how we work with the company. But I also want to be clear that from a family office perspective, it's really important for me to have proper governance within a company. So even though we're deeply involved in the company, we're working with the company, on a daily basis. I don't run the company. The company is, or neither does she. The company is run by Niven Narain, who's our CEO. He is a tremendous individual in the drug development, drug discovery, and AI world. I'm a board member, but I'm not the executive chair today. I was for a little while. Now I'm not. And that's because we want to have a proper and need to have a proper governance structure around the company.
Somebody is asking, we did answer that. Are you determined to go public, or are you willing or prefer to onboard or be bought out by one of the big pharma companies? Please elaborate on why with the preferred choice.
So the company is preparing for a public offering. That is the clear pathway. That said, oftentimes what happens in companies like this is they prepare themselves to go public. They get closer to going public, either when they go or just before they go public, they get acquired. There's a company called AskBio that was a closely held company. I think they were down in the Carolinas, if I remember right. It was a biopharma company. Very, similar in the respect that it was closely held by, some families. The company started diversifying its cap table and preparing itself to go public, and it was acquired by, I think it was Bayer that acquired them for 4.1 billion. I may be off a little bit on the number, but so it's very possible that the company could get acquired along the way. But just like anything in business, we'll take an objective look at it. So if something were to occur where an offer or a situation, put itself forward, then we would look at that from the board level and decide whether or not it made sense. And if it did, we would put it to a shareholder vote and, make a determination based on what's best for the company.
What challenges did the company face on its path treating aggressive malignancies and uncommon disorders, and how has the team overcome these obstacles to achieve its current position?
I think, so this is a time to say, that AI is a little bit of a blessing and a curse. So I mentioned at the beginning of the call, at the outset of the call, we work on mitochondrial issues, and we work on protein homeostasis through our E2 program. When you look at that, though, AI allows you to develop all these different drugs, and this is what I was talking about earlier. It's like, oh my gosh, you have something for sarcopenia and cancer and skin disease and all this. So one of the things that you really have to do, and the company is working very diligently on, is staying focused. And so when you look at our oncology asset, this IV formulation representation, that drug, we know from a 1B trial, an all-comer trial, we know that it works in many different aggressive solid tumor cancers. So is it a cure-all for every cancer? No, but we know it works in like triple-negative breast cancer, aggressive prostate cancer, works in sarcomas, works in aggressive gastric and liver cancers, and so forth. So, okay, well, what do you do with that, right? You can't run all these clinical trials. So you have to really pick and choose what you're going to do. And that comes from, soliciting exceptionally solid advice from the SAB. So we go to our SAB to understand, their viewpoints and advice. We look at the data very carefully. We talk to different, clinical sites. This could be, Stanford, Cedars-Sinai, Oxford, Dana-Farber, and we collect all this different data. And then what we do is we make determinations on where to focus the company in terms of which cancers. So when you think about glioblastoma, multiforme, or pancreatic, why did we choose those if we know it works against, let's also say, triple-negative breast cancer? Well, if I go to triple-negative breast cancer or even, prostate cancer, I would have to do, 1,000 patients, 2,000 patients in a clinical trial. But if I go to glioblastoma, where there's very little in the market, and there's, a high degree of suffering from these patients with little treatment, we know we can make an impact in that space. So for us, we can go into that space, we can have early wins, we can get substantial attention from major pharma to partner off the assets, and then come along either with those pharma companies and helping them bring it out into the other indications, or they'll do it on their own.
Now, your operations have been significantly influenced by AI. Would you be able to provide examples of how AI accelerated your drug discovery process, as well as the unique advantages it offers in terms of predictability and efficiency?
Yeah, so okay, so I think a perfect example actually is what I said here. Again, these aren't the actual drugs, so I'm not allowed to have those, but these are to show representations of it. But nobody was sitting in a lab one day looking at a topical like this and saying, "Oh, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to make that into an IV formulation and inject that for cancer or solid tumors." That's a perfect example of where you're able to backfeed information into the AI, data that you have, to where the AI can guide you to specific indications, understanding mechanism of action, and also understanding how to better design your trials. So if you think about today, it's not uncommon to go into a clinical trial and then have a failure where you don't hit your endpoints. That's never happened with this company, and we've run a lot of trials. We have very, very good response in our trials. And part of the reason is that you have so much base data to start with that is unbiased. And that's a real key. It's unbiased, because the data is the data is the data. So sometimes when you look at the data, you think, well, that doesn't make sense, or, like nobody's ever looked at it like that before. But you really have to just take it for what it is. And because AI is very good in looking at billions and billions of data points and drawing causality from those data points, so you can understand what's happening within those indications, what's happening in terms of mechanism of action, what's happening in terms of how you apply these drugs, these therapeutics in different indications. Where before it was a lot of trial and error, because you just simply couldn't look at that much data. You couldn't create a large enough team to look at billions and billions of data points, which the AI can do.
So your highly sophisticated platform was born from really multidisciplinary approach, which requires expertise across chemistry, biology, math, AI, computer science. How are you able to attract such top talent across all these different fields?
Yeah, look, it's just like any business, they're out there. I think what's it's you have to, a lot of it is networking, right? So just like any company in the world, obviously we certainly use big talent acquisition firms, but there's also look, really smart people know really smart people, and so we utilize a lot of talent acquisition through personal connections and associated individuals. But also the teams are not as big as you might think. So, you can put really a 7-person team together that can do the work historically of much, much larger teams, because of the science, because of the tools that are available today. It's, you still have to do the work, but industry is being disrupted all over the place, right? It, used to be, automotive, cars were assembled by hand. Now there's a lot of robots. Used to be, you'd go to the CPA for your taxes. Now half the world or half the country are doing it on, TurboTax or whatever, these types of online platforms. So, it's, the teams are not as big as you would think, and that makes the company very capital efficient. If you think about the pipeline we have, the science we have, the amount of patents we have, and where we are within the space, the company's spend is extremely low. It's a very, very capital efficient company. And that's because you can do a lot with a little.
And finally, how family office can support the continuing development of your lead assets and participate in unlocking the significant enterprise value of the company?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One is we certainly want to work with other family offices to be able to expand our footprint into getting reach to patients. It doesn't matter, as I said, where you are within the wealth strata of the world. Every single person is affected by these types of different diseases. I mean, if you are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer or glioblastoma or whatever, it doesn't really matter whether you have $1 or $1 billion. We're all treated the same, and we all have poor outcomes. So one area is to help by working with these other families to sort of cast a broader net to get patients into the clinical trials and to help them get treatment. To work with different organizations as well that are in these spaces to understand what's happening out there and get, it's not only about the treatment of the patients, but it's also the family suffering as well. So we like to work with different organizations, whether they be philanthropic organizations or otherwise. Secondly, is from an investment opportunity, there are two different ways to participate with the company. As I said, we're expanding and growing, but as we diversify our cap table, some investors we're finding are very interested in the overall platform and investing into that, and others are just interested in specific drug indications. So we are creating methods where a group, a family, a fund could invest into specifically oncology, or even more specifically, they want to invest into glioblastoma, or they want to invest into pancreatic cancer trial. So there's a couple of different levels of, some are more interested in coming in towards the top of the company where they have exposure to the AI and to all those things. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of understanding of what we're doing.
And the company, how old is the company, and where is it based? Is it based in Boston?
It's based in Boston area, yeah. So the company was originally founded in 2009. And at that time, it was called Berg Health. It was named after one of the families. It was actually the family that had initially funded the company. The company is now called BPGbio. It's the same people, it's the same equipment, same technology, same everything. It's just the name had changed to BPGbio, which is just less about that specific family. But the company's based in the Boston area, which is, look, I mean, if you're in biopharma, it's, in the United States, Boston's the big market that you need to be in, that, or sometimes the Bay Area as well.
I'm trying to see another question that's coming up. And how many people are currently in the company?
I don't know the exact number. It's around 80 is my guess inside. But that does not include our CROs. Of course, those are not employees that we employ, but we work with CROs that run the clinical trials. And there's, obviously a lot of employees there. We also have, I think, I'm not exactly sure the number, but there's a large number of people in India that don't work for the company. They're contract where we utilize them for specific pieces. So, maybe it's a chemistry design or particular type of biology work or so forth, something like that. So there's, the company internally really have the very, very top scientists, the very, very, smartest people in the field. And then we utilize different universities, different CROs and so forth to do pieces of the work.
It's just written too small for me here. Another question coming from one of our viewers here. Are you at all concerned that with new drugs, that equity across wealth strata will create a divide in all being treated the same regardless of ability to pay. In other words, that the poor will continue being treated with old standards of care versus the new, more effective treatment.
It's a good question. It's not the side of the business I'm in. That's in the delivery side and the payer side of the business. Although I do think that I actually think the opposite will occur, because I think, if you think about the reason these drugs are so expensive, and there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is it takes so much money and so long to develop these drugs. When you look at the AI and compute power, what you're doing is, again, you're reducing the cost, you're shortening the time, and you're improving the predictability. So I think actually AI is going to do the opposite. That's my opinion. It's going to reduce the cost of drug development, and therefore it's going to reduce the cost of medication being delivered to the patient. And I think it's going to actually I think it's going to equalize, or rather make the medical system more equitable.
And we have time for just one more question. So is there any other company, one or two companies that do what you guys do in the approach of AI and medicine, this like you guys do?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing pieces of it. There's different companies, some are public, some are private, that are doing pieces. But I don't know of a company that is doing really from all the way from the start, where you're talking about from the biobank, not working with publicly available data, but working from its own biobank that was built over a decade, taking that, which is all the clinical annotations forward through its wet labs, in through the multi-omic systems, through the AI and the supercompute. I don't know of another company that's doing all of those things.
So I think this is about all the questions I had. And anything else, Daniel, you'd like to add to summarize? And by the way, this is as most of you know already, this has been recorded. This will be available online. We will send you later on the contact info in order to get involved with the company, as well as the link to this recording. Yeah, sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Look, I got into this company because I want to help improve the human condition, and I have personal connections and reasons to do so. But I would also say, look, I'm an investor. Our family office is first generation. I earned the money and want to grow the money. So I'm here to turn $1 into $10. I think a key that I would stress at the close of the call is, if you look at all the different disruption that's occurred over certainly my 50 years on this earth of science and technology, and now it's having smartphones and everything else, there's many trillion-dollar companies that were created. And really the next disruption in my mind is specifically in medicine, specifically in drug development and healthcare, because it's ripe for disruption. Costs are going up. We need to get costs down. We need to get patient outcomes to improve. Human biology, as we have an aging population, is crucially important. I think and COVID certainly showed that to us. And I think this company is one of those companies that is going to be and already is a true disruptor in the industry, that is going to have tremendous wealth value creation.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. I see we have more questions. Maybe we'll do another one. But what's your opinion on functional medicine? Medicine? I don't have no idea what that means. But functional medicine.
So I'm not sure I understand the question in entirely. So
I didn't answer the question either. What's your opinion on functional medicine? That's the question. Well, I would like to mention that when we send you all the information, you will be able to contact Daniel for more questions and take it from there because we're actually out of time. And I will just mention, we're entering you basically probably the last family office event, Daniel, that we're doing before we enter the summer. That actually we already are here. So you're the one sending everybody to the summer vacation now. And I wanted to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. We will be back probably with more dinners in September and October. And as you may know, November is this year our most hectic month in history, with 7 conferences around the world: Vancouver, Montreal, London, New York, Miami, LA, and Palo Alto. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. And Daniel, I hope I'll see you at least some of these.
Absolutely. I'll be at all the ones where the warm weather is.
Yeah, we pick the right destination at the right time. Trust me. Yeah, Miami we're doing during Art Basel every year. So, so thank you very much, Daniel. We will send everybody the information, and it will be available in 24 hours online as well. And I encourage you to get in touch and hopefully get involved. So thank you, and have a great summer and 4th of July.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.